Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Jillian Bender-Cormier with Bender Insurance Solutions. We want to welcome you to another educational Bender U webinar, Mastering ETP, the Do's and Don'ts of Employment Training Success. Some housekeeping notes. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the Q&A section. We'd like this to be an interactive experience, so our presenter will be available to answer your questions in real time throughout the webinar. During our additional Q&A time at the end of the presentation, I'll be sharing other questions you might have with our speaker. We want to be conscious of time, so if we don't get to answer all of your questions, we'll gladly reach out to you individually after the webinar. You are all in listen-only mode and will remain muted throughout today's session. This session is being recorded. At the conclusion of the webinar, the recording link as well as a copy of the slide deck will be forwarded to you. We have an incredible expert sharing with us this morning, and to introduce them, I'd like to hand it over to our President and CEO, Maggie Bender-Johnson. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you, Jillian, and good morning, everyone. I'm honored to introduce Mike Sneed, who is the president of Sierra Consulting Services. For the past 12 years, Mike's firm has helped hundreds of companies apply for California training funds and procure contracts ranging from $20,000 to $600,000. These funds are designed to help companies train their employees in business skills, manufacturing and commercial skills, computer skills, and process improvement skills. Prior to this, he worked as a consultant for emerging companies to raise private equity capital, develop business plans, and identify risk management strategies, as well as finding tax incentives to reduce taxes. Mike was also a faculty member at the University of Phoenix in Sacramento, where he taught finance. Mike has a master's degree in business administration from California State University, Northridge, and a bachelor's degree in economics from UCLA. Take it away, Mike.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Maggie, and welcome this morning, everyone. Appreciate that. Today we're going to be talking about ETP, which stands for Employment Training Panel. It's a state agency that's been around for about 40 years and has been really helping companies here in California to improve their processes, their operations, their competitiveness, to really help kind of their bottom line. So today we'll be going through several things about ETP. One is about what it is, what the agency does. After that, we'll talk about a couple companies that have benefited from the program, and then also some additional information about ETP. We do have one of the clients that I've worked with joining us at Aero Construction, and so Caroline will be joining us a little bit in the presentation. So with that, I'll just go through. What is ETP? So it's a training reimbursement program, and it was designed, like I say, about 40 years ago to help California companies become more competitive against their out-of-state competitors. So 40 years ago, much like today, we were bleeding manufacturers and companies to other states and countries that had a lower cost of doing business. So the legislature wanted something to help California companies help become more competitive, because we all know California is expensive to do business in, with high wages, property values, taxes, regulations, things like that. So the purpose of ETP was really to help offset the cost of training. Currently, it offsets the cost of training by $28 per hour, which I'll explain more in a minute. But the theory is, if we can help offset the cost of training, then hopefully California employers will do more training. And as they upskill their employees, then hopefully through efficiencies, we can bend that cost curve back down and help California companies become more competitive. So that's the overall thought process behind ETP. It was started in 1982, so it's been around a little over 40 years. As I mentioned, it was designed to help level the playing field for companies that face out-of-state competition. So originally it was for manufacturers. Since then it has expanded to other industries, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it really is designed to help companies that are facing that out-of-state competition challenge. It's paid for through a payroll tax. So under your unemployment insurance tax, there is a ETT tax, which stands for Employment Training Tax, and that funds ETP, the agency. So it's a formula. I think it's $7 for the first $1,000 of wages. And so basically, every for-profit company pays about $7 into the fund per employee. And in the aggregate, it's about $100 million this year. The training funding size is up to about $600,000 per company, but usually the first-time applicants are limited to about 250,000, and that's also limited by the size of company, how many employees you have, how much training you do, which I'll explain in just a minute as well in terms of the formula. So first thing is company qualifications, and will your company qualify? The first point is it's strictly for California employers and California employees. So because it's funded by a California payroll tax, California has limited the ability of companies that are only based in California and only for their employees. The first tier is, does a company face out-of-state competition? So manufacturers with a NICS code, industry code of 31, 32, or 33, they're automatically assumed to have out-of-state competition, and we don't need to prove that they have out-of-state competition. But the rest of the group, if you're not a manufacturer or I believe a engineering firm, then we do have to show some kind of out-of-state competition. Now there is an ability that if you don't have any out-of-state competition, there is a plan B. But for most companies, we look either one of two things. Does 25% or more of your revenue come from out of California? If so, then you should be able to qualify for out-of-state competition. Or number two, most companies usually are 100% based here in California, as is their revenue. So then we look to see, well, do you know of 3 out-of-state competitors that are based out of California and do not have any California offices? So again, if they're headquartered in Houston, but they have a California office, that will not count. So we're looking strictly for out-of-state competitors that have no offices in California. If you're aware of 3 competitors that qualify like that, then we can use that to qualify you for out-of-state competition. The advantage of having out-of-state competition with ETP is that it lowers the threshold for a qualifying wage down to $23.56. If we cannot establish the out-of-state competition factor, then it goes up to $32.12 minimum wage for a qualifying employee. Now we can add benefits in there, so that can lower those wages down by $2.50. But there is an advantage for companies that have out-of-state competition with ETP. They do have a lower threshold for minimum wage. The other company qualification is turnover. So ETP likes to see companies that have a turnover rate less than 20%, and that would be for your involuntary turnover. So people that you've either fired for cause or lay off longer than 30 days. So that number for last year, which in this case would be 2024, if that's less than 20%, then you'd be able to qualify for the program as well. If it's higher than 20%, there are some additional questions we would ask to see if that was an anomaly, or if your industry tends to be higher in general. But overall, ETP likes to see things under 20%. That does not include people who've quit, retired, moved away, things like that. It's strictly your involuntary turnover rate. So once we qualify the company, then we need to see how many employees will qualify for reimbursement. So the first point is the employees need to be full-time. So with ETP, it's 35 hours or more per week. And number two, the wages, as I talked about. In the Sacramento and the Central Valley, if you have out-of-state competition, then the minimum wage would be $23.56. We can include $2.50 per hour in benefits, so that would take that down to $21.06 would be the starting wage. And that would be at the end of the contract, so that'd be at the end of 2 years. So if somebody is slightly below that, chances are they'll probably qualify by the end of your ETP contract. The Bay Area, because wages are higher, it has a higher minimum of 25.70, and then each county has its own wage that we can, if you're interested, we can talk about later. As I mentioned, there's no out-of-state competition. It becomes what they call a SET, S-E-T, which 3212 would be for priority industries, 4283 if it's a non-priority industry, which I have another slide about if you're priority or not. But basically, a priority industry is if you produce a product, like construction, manufacturing, IT, things like that, versus your non-priority is to be service-based. So you still can participate with ETP, but if you don't have any out-of-state competition, then it has a much higher minimum wage. Small businesses can qualify as well as large ones. And so if you are under 100 employees, we can include owners and executives. If you're over 100 employees, then we still can include your frontline staff, but no owner and no executive. And then we do want to focus on frontline staff, so they limit managers to 20% or less. And then if you do have union employees, we can only include journeymen and not your apprentices. So that's the employee qualifications. Next is in determining from an application perspective, how much do you think you can qualify for? How much do you, do you want? It's based upon a formula of a number of qualifying employees and also how many hours you train over a 2-year period. So this next slide talks about how much do you train. So there's different types of training. First one is in person, so pretty basic. ETP calls that class lab. We can do remote, like Zoom, Teams, things like that, like we're doing today. So that would be e-learning in the ETP world, but a remote learning environment is perfectly fine. Computer-based training, CBT, so if you have videos with quizzes at the end, that can qualify. I don't have it here, but productive lab or on-the-job training, it's very limited. They used to do more of it, but it is allowed in some cases. So the other thing is, I've talked to companies and they're like, well, we really don't do much training. And when I talk about formal versus informal, they typically think about more formal training. And so formal training would be, next Monday at 2 o'clock, we're going to have a sales meeting. We're inviting these 5 people. We're going to go over phone sales or overcoming objections. And that definitely qualifies, but that'd be more formal training. Or next Monday at 10 a.m., we're going to invite these 3 people, and from the warehouse, we're going to go over forklift training. Again, that's formal training that will qualify. But a lot of small to medium businesses tend to do more informal training, which is if somebody comes by your desk and says, I saw John do something this way, but I do it a different way. Should I do it John's way? Is my way okay? And if you say, well, let's talk about that. How do you do certain things? What's your procedure? And through that process, if you find a better way and they learn a new skill, then even though it was informal, they came by your desk, that would be considered training. Or if there was a mishap and a supervisor said, hey, let's go back through our procedures, something broke down, let's make sure we do this, do that, and prevent this quality issue from happening. So long as you're learning a new skill and going through skills, then it should qualify. And so a lot of times training is not formalized, but so long as you're talking about a new skill, then it should qualify. There's also training for new employees. So typically we talk like orientation versus onboarding. So the first hour or two of orientation, here's your desk, fill out the paperwork, there's the bathroom, there's your new supervisor. There's no skill involved, so that typically will not qualify. But beyond that, once you start training the person on how to do their job, whether it's a full day of shadowing, 3 days, a week of training, all of that onboarding can qualify for ETP as well. And kind of the bottom line, like I said, is did they learn a new skill? That's usually where ETP comes down in terms of the training qualify or not. ETP, it's a reimbursement program. And so it's not a grant. Once you're approved, they're not going to write you a check. They talk about typically it's a performance-based contract based on the number of hours that you train. So as an example, if we talk about a manufacturer, they've got priority employees, and so if they did, and the example, if they got 100 employees and they trained 2 hours a month, that's about 42 hours over a 21-month period, which is the number of months that training occurs in the contract. Then they would be eligible for 100 employees times 42 hours over the contract times $28. They would receive about $117,000, give or take. So again, they might be approved at 117,000, but we would need to see what they call sign-in sheets or rosters for each training that you do. And then as those hours accumulate, then if you hit 100%, you would receive the full amount. ETP typically we've seen averages about $1,000 an employee. That's typically based upon a $28 reimbursement for priority industries and about 40 hours, give or take, on average over a 2-year period of training. So about 2 hours a month we see. You can train less, you can train more, but on average we see about 2 hours a month of training. And then, as I mentioned, ETP does have priority industries. So if you're not a priority industry, that doesn't mean that you can't join in. You still can, but for a lesser reimbursement rate. So as I mentioned, the first and foremost is manufacturers and food processors. That is what they call a tier 1 priority. But other priority industries for that $28 reimbursement is construction, agriculture, software, IT, and engineering. So basically, if you're producing a product of some kind, then you should be able to qualify for the $28. We verify that based upon your California employer account number, your payroll account with EDD. EDD assigns an industry code, and then ETP uses that industry code to determine if you're at a $28 reimbursement rate or a $24 reimbursement rate. Non-priority industries typically are service-based. They can access ETP funds. Everything's the same, other than just it's a $24 reimbursement rate. There are some industries that are not suited for ETP, typically retail, gyms, restaurants, things like that. There are a few industries that are excluded from ETP, such as mortgage banking. But the retail side, typically because they don't have out-of-state competition, and their wages tend to be on the lower side, and so it's just tough to qualify them for ETP. So how do you access the ETP funds? There is an application process involved, and so typically what I do for my clients is that there's a 2-hour application intake. In that intake, we'll ask them over the next 2 years, what are some of the challenges the company is facing? What are some of the strategic plans, major initiatives, new equipment, new marketing, new products, kind of what's new on the horizon for the next 2 years, so that it shows that if you're introducing a new marketing plan, a new product, installing new equipment, new certifications, things like that, that generally those require training to accomplish. So ETP, on average, doesn't really want to support your ongoing training, just because typically you're going to do it anyway with or without ETP. So they're looking to support your major initiatives, training initiatives, new software, kind of what's new. So in the initial needs assessment, we're looking for what are some of the new things that the company is going to be undertaking over the next 2 years that we can highlight for ETP to show them that not only does the company qualify, the employees qualify, but the activities qualify as well, that ETP is looking to help support your company in the hopes that 2 years from now it will be a better run, more competitive, more improved operationally type of company. And then after that, the application takes about 30 pages to actually fill out. And so it's full of questions like when were you founded, who would oversee the ETP project, what topics will the company be training on, general topics. They don't need training plans, they don't need specifics, just general, which another slide or two will show you some of those topics. But so some basic questions, name, address, things like that. But the heart of it is that what I call a narrative, or your training initiatives. After we submit the application, it takes about 4 to 6 months. Usually manufacturers are about 3 to 4 months. Construction and industries usually take a little longer. And then if you're applying under $75,000, then the application will be approved by the executive staff, and it's usually within several months. If you're over $75,000 request, then you'll be going before the ETP panel, and which is here in Sacramento. There are some chances between 75,000 and 200,000 that they may not need to see you personally, so you may not need to come to Sacramento. But if you're over 200,000 for sure, and or they have the option of requesting your presence if you're below 200,000, if they do have some questions about your application. Typically at the panel, you're there for about 5 minutes answering some basic questions, and then they'll take a vote and approve you right there. The panel takes, like I said, about 5 or 10 minutes. Once you're approved, then they'll issue a contract, and you have 2 years to complete all of the training, and it's based upon how many hours you think you would be training your staff and turning in those rosters. So the next step then is, once you're approved, how do we document training? So ETP has a standard one-page sign-in sheet. They call it a roster. And so at the very top, there's a class lab, which was the trainer and the trainees in the same room, same vicinity. Was it e-learning or video conference, meaning was it a Zoom or a Teams remote kind of learning? Productive lab if it was on-the-job training. And so, and then we've got some other boxes, date, roster number, things like that. Was it a business skill? Was it a commercial skill? Which on the next slide, I'll show you what types of topics there are, what category. Start time, end time, and then, if there's a lunch break or not, things like that, and then the total time. And then what was the topic? The employees will print their name, sign it, and the trainer down below prints their name and sign it as well. So let's see, and then I talked about formal versus informal, the payout. So unlike a lot of government incentives, which are tax credits, ETP is not a grant and it's not a tax credit. So what's fairly unique to ETP is that as you hit certain milestones with your application, you'll actually receive checks in the mail, and they're called progress payment checks. So the first check that you can receive is what they call a P1 progress payment, but usually it's worth about 25% of your application amount. You can qualify for that after your employees hit 8 hours. So, and there is a minimum of 8 hours and a maximum of 200 hours for the contract per employee. So after they train 8 hours, we can request a progress payment. You'll receive about 25% of your application amount. Then at the end of your training period, which is 21 months, then we can request another progress payment, which is worth about 50% of your earnings. So at the end of your 21 months, then you'll have received at least 2 checks, which are worth about 75% of your application amount. And then we wait about 3 months after that to process paperwork. There's no training. And then at the end of the 3 months, final 3 months, we can request your closeout, which is worth about 25%. So you'll get at least 3 checks worth 25%, 50%, and then the remaining 25%. A lot of people ask, what kind of training or what kind of skills, topics can we use for ETP? And so ETP breaks the training into various topics. So the first one is business skills. These are general skills that all businesses need regardless of industry. So on here you'll find accounting, payroll, sales and marketing. It can be product knowledge. It can be soft skills as well. So that can include communication skills, dealing with difficult people, whether it's inside a company or customers. It can be time management, strategic planning. So there's both hard skills and soft skills that are allowed with ETP. Manufacturing skills, this would be typically any of the skills that manufacturers will need for the frontline folks. So that would be how to actually fabricate, manufacture the product, as well as any of the equipment operation, assembly procedures, inventory control, warehousing, logistics, things like that. CNC machining is pretty common. So, so that's manufacturing. We also have management skills. So We've seen a number of people either add a middle management level or promote what they would call, technicians or frontline folks now into a supervisor or management level. And what they find is that although the employee is a good technician at the frontline level, they might be lacking some people skills in terms of managing the people that they're working with. So they need some management skills or supervisory skills. So that's allowed as well. The next one, there's some additional skills. We have continuous improvement. So that would be process improvement, Lean, Six Sigma, just in time, ISO. Also some other skills like problem solving, workflow scheduling, things like that we see common. We have hazardous materials, literacy skills. So if you are looking to train a number of your employees on English as a second language or vocational math, things like that, that is reimbursable as well. Computer skills, so any software programs that the company is running, Microsoft Office, for some reason, I don't know why, but they won't reimburse basic Microsoft Office, Excel, Word, but intermediate and advanced levels, they will, plus any other software programs that the company is running, whether it's construction, Procore, Plan Grid, things like that, or other software programs, whether it's accounting, you name it, it should be able to be qualified. One thing I just realized that's not on here, if you're a manufacturer, then you're going to have manufacturing skills. But if you're not a manufacturer, then you're going to have commercial skills. And so commercial skills would be, again, any frontline skills that your folks need, whether it's construction, so hand tools, equipment tools, grading, excavating, things like that, or agriculture related, planting, fertilizer, pesticides. So any kind of skills that your frontline staff need in order to do their job, if you're not a manufacturer, would fall under commercial skills and basically the equivalent. So as you can see, typically the skills are pretty broad, and most times the skills are usually that things that you're already training on. There are 3 buckets of skills that they do not reimburse. The first is HR labor law. We all know HR is important, but it does not give you necessarily a competitive advantage, and everybody else has to train on HR labor law anyway. So they won't reimburse any HR related things. Basic safety, so first aid, fire extinguisher, things like that. Some of the OSHA mandated safety, confined space, heat illness prevention, PPE, personal protective equipment, things like that that are mandated by OSHA. Because they're mandated and you have to do it, they're not going to reimburse you as well. Not that it's not important, it's already mandated. So they're looking to support above and beyond what you're required to do. Third thing is, just housekeeping, how to clean a perfect bathroom, how to clean a perfect kitchen. Important, as we all know, but it just doesn't give you a competitive advantage, and they won't reimburse that. Apart from that, typically about 90–95% of all the training you do should be eligible for ETP. Okay, so the first one is, to give you an example of how this works, is a winemaker. So the company, in this case, about 20 years old, they have about 300 employees, and they train about 200 employees. So they qualify, they're a priority industry, and their staff was able to qualify as well, full-time, met the minimum wage, things like that. Their turnover rate was below 20%, and they did have some training initiatives that they wanted and needed to be trained on. So some examples, they needed to modernize their equipment. So some of the equipment had been 20 years old. They were breaking down. There were some lengthy downtimes. Some equipment wasn't even, they couldn't get parts for it anymore. So they needed new equipment. They needed new packaging lines. They needed a high-speed packaging line, new fermenters and blenders, things like that. So they also have some new products, such as a low and no alcohol wine, and some green initiatives, such as low, no pesticide. So their staff needed training on how to do those things, how to work the new equipment. A lot of this equipment, if you're already in that space, it's not just simply turning on a button and hit the power button. They can be pretty complicated. If you're blending things, there's all kinds of things you need to know. And so very complex, took weeks to get trained on, and needed a lot of training. So They also had a new ERP software upgrade. And again, if you're familiar with ERP software, they can just be a nightmare in terms of it takes a huge amount of time to train on. And so again, these were above and beyond things that they typically trained and needed. And so ETP was able to help support their program, and it worked out really good. And so in the application and in the administration, so we talk about the initiatives, but then who does that affect? So the packaging lines would affect operators. They needed training, the mechanics, because it's new equipment, engineers, the forklift drivers, packers, the material handlers, obviously supervisors, managers. So when we go through an application and we talk about the various initiatives, we're also looking for, okay, well, how many people need to get trained on that initiative, and how many people will that affect? Some things will only affect 2 or 3 people. Others will, will affect a huge amount. And so we are looking for, not just a few pigeonhole initiatives, but what will affect, kind of quote the masses, a big part of the staff that we can talk about in the application, and that would generate training hours for you for the contract. The blenders, again, they had a large staff on blending and fermenting, so those affected a fair amount of large people. And the ERP almost affected everybody. So there's all kinds of computer interface, obviously accounting, but managers, but even frontline staff. They're implementing an ability that on the computer stations throughout the operations would feed back into the ERP. So they had to change their operations in order to be able to get the information from the workstations into the ERP. And so it really did affect everybody to be able to get the good information that they needed from a management level into that new software program. And then, so that was an example for the winery. Next, I'd like to introduce Caroline Rommel from Arrow Construction. So Arrow has worked with ETP and my company for about, I think, 3 contracts. They are a underground utility company, so they work with like SMUD and PG and other companies, help bury a number of those overhead power lines. And there's Caroline. So the company was founded in 1995. They're headquartered here in Sacramento. They do have 3 locations throughout California. And so here to talk about the company and how it benefited and or worked with ETP is Caroline Rommel. So Caroline, I think your mic is still muted. If you can turn that on, perfect. Let me get to your slide, and then go ahead and take it away from here.
Good morning. I'm thankful to be here today on behalf of Arrow Construction. I would like to share our positive experiences with the ETP program and all the benefits our company has benefited from. I'm going to start with the successful ETP program funding. This is Arrow Construction's 3rd consecutive ETP contract with 2 previous successful fundings from the ETP program. The ETP program funding has been a strategic asset for Arrow Construction, enabling our company to enhance workforce capabilities and ongoing training while supporting major infrastructure projects across California. Through the funding, Arrow has achieved workforce upskilling. Arrow can train both new hires and existing employees in high specialized job-specific skills. It delivers hands-on instruction and training for PG&E operator qualification, which are our OQs. Specialized heavy equipment operations such as horizontal directional drilling, hydrovacs, and other specialized heavy equipment operations to meet specific requirements for our customers, which are primarily PG&E and SMUD. We also incorporate OSHA 10 and 30 certifications and other applicable certifications to meet our construction industry needs. support specialized training for major projects, sharing in the aftermath of the 2017 Santa Rosa wildfire. The ETP program enabled Aero Construction to deliver specialized workforce training that was critical to rebuilding efforts. The training supported installation of upgraded underground transmissions, distributions, and service lines for PG&E, systems specifically engineered to withstand future wildfire risks and enhancing public safety. Additionally, the ETP program has been instrumental in helping Aero Construction meet the specialized training standards required by both PG&E and SMUD. This includes advanced training for the installation of upgraded underground gas and electric conduits, as well as compliance with SMUD contractor safety training requirements, critical for contractors working in and around live electrical systems within substations. Our cost-effective growth, our ETP program allowed Aero Construction to expand operations at our new Madera office by hiring and training our new workforce without absorbing the full training cost. The ETP program provided additional software training. We have our HCSS, our Lytix cameras, our Vista Cloud, and our WorkMax to modernize operations and improve project tracking, safety, and efficiencies. Our customer and partner alignment. The success of the ETP program has provided alignment training with requirements for our key utility partners like PG&E and SMUD, ensuring compliances and quality standards. Our positive outcomes, thanks to ETP funding, Aero Construction has been able to strengthen our workforce, support our community recovery and upgrades, improve our operational efficiencies, and enable our construction to expand our business while reducing the financial burden of trainings. If we can move on to the next slide show, our application processes. Eligibility assessment. Aero Construction would assess whether its industry aligns with ETP priority sectors and identify targeting training requirements. Eligibility training needs assessment. Aero Construction conducts a comprehensive internal training needs assessment and workforce analysis. This includes reviewing current employee skill levels and identifying gaps in key areas such as safety and compliance, OSHA standards, technical construction skills, such as in underground infrastructure, specialized equipment operations, directional drilling machines, our hydrovac machines, and other specialized heavy equipment operations. Project coordination and leadership in construction environments, proficiency with industry software tools such as project management and design platforms. Additionally, the company evaluates individual employees and their potential for advancement and develops a 2-year succession plan to support workforce growth in a long-term leadership. Eligibility. ETP conducts a 2-hour application intake meeting consultation. So Aero Construction and ETP consultant will schedule a 2-hour intake meeting to assess the eligibility and training needs for ETP funding, including the company's 2-year goals, new initiatives, and training strategy. So it's a big support system that we have on our side there. Eligibility proposal submission. Aero Construction and ETP consultants define the training scope including topics, delivery format, job classification, estimate training hours, and indicates proposal development. Eligibility agreement execution. Aero construction application proposal is submitted to the employee training panel via their online system. ETP staff reviews the proposal. Aero construction awaits contract approval. I know, Mike, you already touched on that a bit. Once approved, Aero Construction receives a contact outlining the training terms and conditions, and the progress for the reimbursement begins. Eligibility, documentation, and reimbursement. Aero Construction maintains record keeping and submission of documentation to secure training reimbursements. On to our third administration processes. Simple documentation. It is an easy to use and straightforward process requiring only basic information like names, dates, and training hours on the approved ETP sign-in sheets. Aero Construction is currently exploring enhancements to the integration of alternative digital DocuSign or e-signatures, which will be utilized for field training use of tablets and iPads when remote out in the field. There's no complex systems needed. It's easy to implement and can be managed by using simple tools like Excel or printable sheets or the company's internal platform for record keeping. ETP sign-in sheets and documentation can be efficiently managed using simple, straightforward methods, no advanced software required, making tracking easy and accessible for all trainers. Improves accountability and tracks training progress. Provides and verifies documentation that trainees were present for each session and ensures accurate monitoring of employee participation by recording exact arrival and departure times, supporting compliance and precise training hours documentation, and encourages accountability and punctuality, and who still needs more training, improvements, record keeping, and documentation consistency, and also helps identify gaps. Simple auditing and of the ETP sign-in sheets and compliance audits. Regular reviews ensures accuracy, completeness, and compliance of the training records, helps identify and resolve issues before an official audit. Well-maintained sign-in sheets help pass ETP's audits with minimal risk or delays. The time spent, approximately 30 minutes to an hour to review our sheets to ensure all proper documentation is in place. Enhances record keeping. Builds a reliable historical record of workplace development efforts. Boost internal reporting by allowing management to report on training metrics such as attendance rates or department participation. Some important notes. Employers must keep all the original ETP sign-ins, sheets, documents. These records must be available for audit or monitoring by ETP staff or the California Employment Development Department. Original daily sign-in and sign-out sheets, whether wet or digital signatures, class rosters, curriculum, training materials, invoice and payroll records, proof of trainee eligibility. ETP supports reimbursement, serves as a primary evidence for ETP reimbursement claims by documenting hours. ETP program encourages engagement. Employees are most engaged when training is tracked and acknowledged formally. The outcomes, strong track records of success, working directly with an ETP consultant, which is Mike and his staff, ensures accurate tracking of training hours, timely documentation, and compliance with ETP requirements, maximizing reimbursements and minimizing administrative costs is less of a burden on Arrow. And that pretty much wraps it up.
Great. Well,
It's
thank you
but
so
yeah,
much. I think, go ahead.
it's just been a really great program to be part of.
Great. Well, I think it always helps to have a real world example, someone who's actually been through it to explain the program and their experience as well. I will say I believe Caroline will be available for questions as well as myself afterwards if anybody has questions. So we'll just got a few more things just to wrap up, and then we can open up for questions. Thanks so much, Caroline.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, so just a few more things. Why do companies use ETP? Again, we're looking for things that are kind of above and beyond the usual things. So it could be high growth, adding middle management, technicians or field staff who need leadership or management skills. Other companies, I had one company that for customer service said, we're starting to lose clients. We've got a couple large ones that said, if we do nothing but improve our customer service, that'll be the win. I've had clients with international expansions that needed training that they've never done international logistics, or they had to change some of their recipes for a longer shelf life to even get to their destinations. So, and then ERP software implementations doesn't have to be ERP, it could be any other kind of software as well. But obviously, there's some training on the software expansions. I had a client that was adding 200 welders, so they had a lot of training obviously for that, and just internally too, because they were growing their product and their market. Construction companies, I've heard a lot of companies that the level of skill, it's hard to find experienced people, so they're having to train new people. Kind of the classic, if you can fog a mirror, you're hired. But they're really starting from the basics. So I mean, I've had clients, some of these people didn't even know what kind of tool was, different wrenches, different saws. I mean, literally just what do I do and what are these tools? So a lot more training involved with a number of construction companies that I've seen the last couple of years. And then automation, clients that are adding new equipment to automate things. There's a lot of training involved with that. So again, we're looking for what's new, what's different, what's happening in the next couple of years that might be above and beyond. And then the other good thing, just to wrap up, is that if you finish the first ETP contract, you can come back and do a second and a third one. So I've got clients that are on their, like Arrow, that are on their third contract. When I first started ETP, Coca-Cola, I believe in Sacramento, they were on their eighth or ninth contract. So it's important though that if you do come back for a second or third contract, we cannot repeat some of the things we talked about in earlier applications. So they do have to be standalone applications that can't be copy paste, but you can come back for additional contracts because most companies are growing. Most companies have new things to talk about, new things that they're implementing. And so they want to partner with ETP to help support the training for those new initiatives. And then I believe with that, we have time for Q&A for about the next 10 minutes.
Perfect.
Jillian, you're available? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mike, and thank you to Caroline. Yes, folks, go ahead and send in your questions into the Q&A section, and I'm happy to ask those questions of Mike. And Mike, we do have some questions I'd like to share. Can we use ETP for on-the-job training?
You can. So they call it Productive Lab. They kind of, it's not what it used to be. And what I mean by that is a number of years ago, up to half of your training could be on-the-job training, Productive Lab, because they recognize some equipment is just very complicated and you only learn by doing, or even like construction or welding. Certain things you actually learn by doing. So they would allow for on-the-job training reimbursement, but it is a double dip because as your employees are working on your product, you're going to get paid from your customer and you're going to get paid by ETP. So they do limit how much on-the-job training you can do. But there's been a recent rule change where I believe it's 25% or less of your hours can be productive lab. So if we apply for an average of 40 hours, then only 8 to 10 hours of that 40 can be productive lab or on-the-job training. So it is possible, but you are limited in terms of how many hours you can do simply because it is a double dip where you're getting paid by ETP and by your customers for the same effort.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Another question, can we use third-party trainers or just our own staff?
Now that's a great question. So let's see. So ETP is pretty neutral or indifferent in terms of who you use to train your staff. Again, their concern is are your employees learning new skills? How they learned it, where they learned it, who they learned it by. Typically, they don't really care. So you can use third-party trainers. It's the classic 80-20. I mean, probably 80% of the rosters we see are by staff, and maybe 10 to 20% are by third-party trainers. Now, there's been another recent rule that as long as they're a California-based trainer, you're good to go. If you're going to be using any out-of-state trainers, then we need to know about it during the application process. And sometimes if you're going to be using a third-party out-of-state trainer for customer service, they're not going to approve that because you can find a customer service trainer here in California. It's pretty generic. But if you're needing an out-of-state trainer for equipment and you're having the manufacturer from Italy or Iowa or wherever come into California to train you on their own equipment, then yes, that will be approved. But we just need to know about it during the application process.
Wonderful. Thank you. If we apply for ETP a second time, can we use the same application and topics, or do things have to be different?
Yeah, another good question. So they really do have to be different. Kind of from a visual, ETP, if you're here and 2 years from now, you're going to be here and that, you're more efficient, you're better run, you're better this, you're better that. And this is the first contract got you here. Well, the second contract, they want to get you here. And so they want to know what's new, what's different on the next contract, much like we asked what's new or different on the first contract. So now I've got clients that they've got new initiatives all the time. They're growing, they're expanding, they've got new equipment, new software, new this, new that. So they're a great candidate for a second or a third application because they do have new training initiatives that they need. And again, ETP typically doesn't want to pay your ongoing training or reimburse it because you're going to do it. So we are looking for what's new, what's different. And so you can come back a second, third time, but we just can't use some of the initiatives we used on the first contract for the second contract because they've already paid you for those initiatives on the first contract. So it does have to be new and fresh all the time.
Great. Thank you so much. A few more questions. Is there a company size minimum to apply for ETP?
Yeah. Short answer is no, other than one employee. So if you're, I mean, they have one program for entrepreneurs that if you have between 1 and 9 employees, then you're in a certain category, which is called the entrepreneur program, and you still can apply for that. Typically, I see companies that are 20 employees or more, just from a standpoint that it's a pretty lengthy application process, 4 to 5, 6 months. And so usually the return on time for the company and my company, usually at 20 employees and above, we start to see that it's worth everyone's time. Having said that, the good news, if you're below 20 employees, ETP has a different kind of contract called a multiple employer contract. These are trade organizations or colleges that already have an ETP program. And if you're a smaller company, then you can participate with that multiple employer contract since they already have their own contract and you're simply participating with them on their contract as opposed to your own. The application process is a lot simpler. You can be approved within just 2 or 3 days, and and they work with you well. So if anybody needs to find out a multiple employer contract, I know of several, and they can always email me, and I'm happy to refer them as well. But typically, if you're 20 employees and above, then it starts to make sense to be your own single employer, just your own contract, as opposed to participating with a college or a trade association with their contract. But either way, as long as you have one employee, you can participate.
Perfect. And a question here, can startups apply for this?
They can. That one employee rule still applies. So if you're a solo consultant, technically you're not an employee. You're a solo, sole proprietor or something like that. So you have to have at least another employee, and I believe you have to be in business for 1 year before you're eligible for ETP. And the reason for that is it has a dedicated tax that I mentioned earlier, which is that ETT, Employment Training Tax. And so they want to, when you apply for ETP, they check your eligibility and verify certain things. One of the things that they verify is, did you pay at least 1 year into this ETT tax, so that you can then draw money out of the fund. But if you haven't paid money into the fund or into the agency, then you have to at least wait 1 year of paying that ETP tax, so in order to become eligible. So yeah, startups are eligible, but kind of that runs the range. Is it your first month, which I've talked to companies in their first month or two, they're not eligible. But once you're past your first year and you've paid an employee ETT tax, then I believe you should be eligible after that first year.
Perfect. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and take this one last question. If we have offices in California and out of California, what do we do with the out-of-state employees?
Yeah, another good question. So because it's a California dedicated tax, the program is only allowed for California employers, for their California employees, and with California trainers, whether it's your own staff training or a California trainer third party. And so if you have multiple offices and some offices are out of state, then we can only on the application count your California employees, and your out-of-state employees would not be eligible. And then we do see some of the out-of-state employees find their way onto the rosters, the sign-in sheets. They might have come into California for a training. We do check with the employer, who is this person and where are they based out of. And so, but if they are based out of state, then the company would not be eligible for reimbursement for their out-of-state employees, only their California employees.
Very helpful. Thank you so much. And Mike, could you go ahead and click to the next slide for me, please?
Yep.
Thank you so much. All right, friends, up next for Bender U in September, we have Protect the Future of Your Business and Drive Growth through Trade Credit Insurance. If you don't know what trade credit insurance you're not alone, and we would love to share more with you. So if you want to sign up to join us, that's going to be on September 18th from 9:30 to 11. You can go ahead and scan that QR code and get signed up directly there. But thank you again, Mike, so much for your time today, and also to Caroline Rommel for sharing with us today. We appreciate you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's Bender U. And as a reminder, this session has been recorded, and both the recording link and a copy of today's slide deck will be emailed to you following the webinar. Should you have any additional questions that pop up, that tends to happen, please don't worry, reach out to us and we will be happy to help you. But thank you again, and we hope you all have a wonderful day. And thank you again, Mike.
Sure thing. Thanks for the invite.